You're listening to BBC Radio Merseyside. It's now 2 minutes past 6 and time for the Monday debate, chaired by Liam Fogarty.
Good evening and welcome to a debate that's been going on for about 200 years. The Orange Order has been a part of Merseyside life for most of that time. To its supporters, it's been at the forefront of defending civil and religious liberties and standing up for Queen and country. Its critics, on the other hand, say the Orange Order, the Lodge, is simply a vehicle for intolerance and sectarianism. Our panel and our invited audience will discuss what the Orange Order means to them. Protestant, Catholic and Dissenter, they're all represented here. I'll begin, if I may, with our panel. Ron Bather is Provincial Grand Master for the Royal Lodge Institution of England, in effect the head of the Orange Order's Liverpool branch. In our studio in London we have Michael Phelan, who is the official historian for the Orange Order in England. Harvey Cox is a senior member of the Institute of Irish Studies at Liverpool University. And Father Anthony Hodgetts is a Catholic priest and, more pertinently, the ecumenical officer for the Merseyside churches. We'll begin with Ron Bather, Provincial Grand Master for the Orange Lodge in Liverpool. What does the Orange Lodge, Ron, stand for?
Well, the Orange Lodge stands for a group of Protestant individuals who are loyal to the Crown and Constitution, remaining Protestants. It was established when William III, Prince of Orange, arrived in England on the invitation to take over the throne from King James the II. The first Orange Association was formed in Exeter in 1688, and in various stages throughout that period there has been Orange organisations. The Orange Institution as we know it today was first formed in 1795 in County Armagh in Northern Ireland. It then came over into England in 1798 and was first set up as a Grand Lodge in the Manchester area and has been established in England since then. To members of the Orange Institution, it is a way of life. Most people are born into it through their families and remain Orange men and women throughout their lives. It's a way of life. It's an accepted way of life to a great many people, whether they be Orange men and women or of other religions. We're tolerant with neighbours and have lived in harmony for a good many years now. The animosity that's reigned in the early part of the century and up to the Second World War, possibly just after, has to a large extent died out, and that we live in harmony with our neighbours and will continue to do so.
Michael Phelan in London, the Orange Lodge, the Orange Order, it has its highest profile, of course, in Northern Ireland, where it's very much a part of everyday life. What is the extent of Orangism on the mainland and in Liverpool in particular?
The Orange Order in England has lodges in most of the major parts of England, but I would guess that about half the membership are concentrated in the Merseyside area, so Liverpool does have the distinction of having the largest concentration of Orangemen under the English jurisdiction.
Now, Harvey Cox, Orangism in Liverpool, part of the Liverpool way of life and the Liverpool way of doing things for a long time. Why did the organisation take root here, and what impact did that have on politics and society in Merseyside?
Well, it took root here because there was, in the 19th century, a very, very large immigration of people from Ireland, from both north and south, to Liverpool to get jobs in the dock industry here. And they brought their politics with them. And they brought their sense of identity with them. And they've been able to carry that on through the generations, and one of the main functions I think that the Orange Order plays both in Ireland and in England is to pass on a particular sense of identity from generation to generation.
Anthony Hodgetts, you're responsible as ecumenical officer for the Merseyside churches for building bridges between the faiths. Is it fair to say that you, however, have nothing to offer people who belong to the Orange Order and people who have those core beliefs that Ron Bather outlined?
I think we have in the Merseyside churches something to offer and something to share with Ron Bather and members of the Orange Lodge. I'm glad of the opportunity of taking part in this debate, because although I visited Belfast on a number of occasions and walked in the Shankill Road, and of course I'm getting to know Liverpool fairly well, I have never had any serious conversation with a member of the Orange Lodge, so I'm glad of the opportunity to do so. And I suspect that there will be many English people like me who belong to mainstream churches who would be a little bit puzzled about the Orange Lodge, and glad to hear such a reflection. Because I think the question that arises most strongly in my mind is whether the Orange Lodge would regard itself as a church or a political party, and what would be the relationship between these two ideas. I've heard Ron speaking about the origins of the Orange Lodge, and also Harvey speaking about the political stances that would have been imported when Irish people came across to England. And I'd like to know whether it is primarily an organisation for political influence or an organisation for, if you like, family life, for prayer, for worship.
That's a question for Ron. Ron, can you answer that?
Yeah, the Orange Institution is neither a church nor a political organisation. We are a Bible-believing Christian organisation. As I said before, we are an organisation solely for Protestants. I make no excuse for that. We build our heritage from the Reformation principles, and we stick to them rigidly. We believe in the open Bible. We have no problems whatsoever in identifying ourselves with the Reformation principles. As I've said on many occasions in the past, the Orange Institution has got nothing whatsoever or the Roman Catholic individuals have got nothing whatsoever to fear from the Orange Institution. Our opposition is to the Roman Catholic Church and its doctrines. We don't accept the doctrines of the Roman Catholic Church, and that's what basically the difference between the Orange Institution, the Roman Catholic Church, and to some extent members of the Church of England.
Now, I said at the outset that the Order places a great emphasis on defending civil and religious liberties and standing up for Queen and country and constitution. Does the Roman Catholic Church, in your view, pose a threat to those liberties and those organisations?
No, not a threat.
So who are you defending him against?
Well, it's not so much a defence, it's to uphold them. We are based on the Crown and Constitution. We defend the Crown and Constitution. The successors nearest to the throne remaining Protestants.
Harvey Cox, there were particular social conditions which allowed the Orange Order to flourish in Liverpool. Was it the case that economic factors and social factors, as well as matters of faith, actually allowed the Orange Lodge to thrive and to become a very important part of Liverpool life?
Yes, I think that the organisation of Dock Labour in particular was sectarian. And that once you were known to be a member of one community, you had a much better chance of getting support and help in finding jobs and getting particular tasks to do from foremen who belonged to that community, and it worked on both sides. And the same thing to some extent has happened in Ulster, and that has meant that in addition to its religious functions, the Orange Order has served as a means of self-help to people who are in it, and a means of helping younger people from the same communities into the job market and so on. And that is why one of the features of the Ulster situation, and where the Ulster situation spills over into other places like Liverpool and Glasgow, has been sectarianism in the workplace.
But that was an understandable response, was it not, to a huge influx of Irish Catholic labour taking the jobs of the indigenous Protestant Liverpudlian population?
Yes, I mean, I think the Orange Order and other organisations began, as we've heard, in County Armagh in the 1790s, and it's not without significance that that was the most populated county in Ireland in that time, and there was rivalry between Protestants and Catholics for the economic goodies that were available. There were many other things to be said about the order, but economic rivalry between people defined in sectarian terms has to be a very important part of the history of the whole business.
Let's explore the religious dimension again with Michael Phelan, the Orange Lodge historian. Michael, the Lodge attracts members from most, if not all, of the Protestant faiths. But it strikes me that the Church of England, the established church in England, has been quite often the target for the wrath of the Orange Order as much as the Catholic Church.
I wouldn't say that. I think that the Orange Order in England has had a relationship with the Church of England that is rather closer than the relationship that it has had with the free churches. And this has shown itself in two ways. First of all, in the Liverpool area particularly, the Orangemen found that they were holding to exactly the same beliefs as certain low church evangelical clergymen, such as Hugh McNeill in the 19th century, culminating perhaps with Bishop Ryle as the first Anglican Bishop of Liverpool, who held views that would have been dear to the heart of every Orangeman. On the other side of the coin, the ritualistic movement that began to work its way into the Church of England from 1830 onwards, and is still to some extent evident today, would have incurred the displeasure of Orangemen, who would have seen this as being a form of Romanism by the back door.
So that's why we find Orange Order members at Walsingham, for instance, the shrine in East Anglia, which is common to both Roman Catholics and to some members of the Anglican faith.
Yes, I would say so. The objection there is not that Roman Catholics or members of the Orthodox churches are there, because they're merely doing what members of those churches are accustomed to doing. What is rather upsetting to Orangemen is that people go along to Walsingham and indulge in ritualistic practices, extreme ritualistic practices, and they purport to be members of the Protestant established Church of England. This seems to us to be somewhat dishonest, and we do try to draw attention to that fact.
Anthony Hodgetts, do you find this concentration on what you might call an opposition to the Roman Catholic faith rather depressing, given that the portrayal of faith and church life in Liverpool tends to put the emphasis on bridge building, coming together, the work of bishops, shepherds and Archbishop Warlock? This sounds like a blast from the past.
I'm not depressed by it. I'm glad to hear the candour with which the members of the Lodge, both here and in London, are prepared to speak about their difficulties as they perceive them, about what Roman Catholics actually do and teach and what their aspirations are. I think that if this debate is going to help the churches and the communities to come together and to live in peace, first of all, there must be true understanding of what each actually stands for and what each actually believes. And some of what is done at Walsingham may not be entirely typical of Roman Catholics and Anglicans, but it needs to be explained. The elements that are objected to, I suspect, there would be processions and devotions which honour and give respect to Mary, the mother of Jesus. And yet, I think that Orangemen would be as convinced as I am that God's gift to the human race was the gift of his Son, as Paul says, born of a woman, born under the law. And they would, like me, wish to explore a little more deeply the significance of God's Son taking flesh in this way. And when one talks about, when a Catholic tries to put his faith in that way, I think it may be perceived as less of a menace to other people and perhaps worth exploring.
As you indicated, there are few, if any, forums where people who subscribe to the Orange Order's core beliefs and other people actually get together. Ron Bather, how much of an effort have you and your members made to try to understand what modern Catholicism is actually all about? Or do you think there's a danger that maybe you're stuck in an image of Catholicism as smells and bells and some sort of Italian conspiracy?
Well, I think it is still that, isn't it? To be quite honest with you. As far as I'm concerned, from a personal point of view, as a member of the Orange Lodge, I've never been involved in anything like this before, and I don't think the Orange Institution has been involved in these things on many occasions. As far as I'm concerned, we do have a conceived image of the Roman Catholic Church, and it's an image that, as far as I'm concerned, is steeped in many hundreds of years of history. Now, there's nothing that's happening today, either in Liverpool or in the world in general, with regards to Roman Catholicism, that makes me any easier to accept it. Now, as I've said before, I've got no crib whatsoever with an ordinary individual Roman Catholic. I work with them, I live with them, and I have done all my life. And my beliefs have never spilled over into being antagonistic towards a member of the Roman Catholic Church.
But do you feel you're actually being left behind in a movement involving other active Christians who are sort of moving on and developing things, building bridges, and you're sort of stuck there in the middle of Liverpool, keeping the flame of the true faith alive?
No, I don't think we're being left behind for 1 minute. I think we are sticking to our principles. And if I may add, that the principles that we profess are basically the right principles. I'm not saying in a religious aspect, I'm talking about in the principles of our everyday lives. If more people accepted principles on a model standing, if we had more religious education in our schools that taught religious education, Christian religious education, if we had more history in our schools, not only would the Orange Institution not have to come to a forum like this to defend itself, that more youngsters would know what it stood for and would know exactly where we stood and where we were going and where we had come from.
Now, one of Ron Bader's predecessors as Provincial Grand Master of Liverpool is Richard Roberts, who is now indeed the Grand Master of the Orange Order throughout all of England. Richard Roberts, do you think this picture of the Orange Lodge as purely a sectarian, rather old-fashioned, frankly bigoted organisation is a parody, or what things does the Lodge do in broader terms, in terms of developing the faith or beliefs of your members?
Well, we are a Christian organisation, and we try to develop the beliefs of our members and the attendance of church of our members as much as we can. I believe that people have a wrong idea of the Orange Institution. We talked before about civil and religious liberties. They were brought into this country by William of Orange. The constitution of this country, which we still live under, was instituted by William of Orange. You see, what would annoy me as an Orangeman, I'm an Anglican. I'm a member of the Church of England. Now, I attend my church, I play my part in my church, I serve in the church, in as much that I'm a side person in the church. Now, to every extent, I am an Anglican. What really annoys me is when people find out that I'm a member of the Orange Institution, where if it was, should we say, no disrespect, if it was a Roman Catholic, he'd be a devout Roman Catholic. I'm an extreme Protestant.
I'm not sure about this word devout. I think devout is a word that the press throw in whenever the word Roman Catholic appears, but...
I'm no more extreme than anybody else.
But how would you regard, say, instances of reconciliation between, for instance, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Pope, or the Pope visiting Liverpool Cathedral as he did 15 years ago, as a practising Anglican and as an Orangeman? Are you torn there?
No, I'm not torn. I'm not torn because as a practising Anglican and Orangeman, I'm a Protestant. And, you know, we talked about Bishop Shepherd. We have in the Church of England 39 articles. And Bishop Shepherd has been in breach of them more times, I think, than after film stars have been in breach of the contracts. Simply, one's got to realise that within a community, everybody's got to work together. We talked about the Liverpool docks. I worked on the Liverpool docks nearly all my life with Roman Catholics, Jews, coloured people, Arabs, goodness knows what. The only thing that was ever said to me on the Liverpool docks was, here's King Jaffa. That was the only thing that was ever said to me. So I had no problem with this. And we talk about the ecumenical movements. I believe that the ordinary man in the street, on both sides of the fence, and I've spoken to both sides of the fence, with regards to the ecumenical movement between the Church of England and the unity question with the Church of England and Church of Rome, I believe the average person would just like to be who he is and what he is. Have his religious liberty, go to his own church, wherever church that may be, and attend his place of worship. It's the hierarchy, I believe, that's trying to push us into this situation of unity. With regards to the Church of England, the leadership of the Church of England over the past 20 years has been absolutely pathetic.
Well, we
pathetic.
We have one of the most prominent members of that church here, Canon Nicholas Frayling from Liverpool Parish Church, who, among other things, is a member of the Radio Merseyside Religious Panel. But here in a personal capacity tonight, Nick Frayling, when you hear a practising Anglican express sentiments like that, how do you feel?
Well, I feel very glad of Mr. Roberts' Christian faith. I'm very glad of his active participation in his local church, and I think that's a great credit to him. And as Mr. Bather said at the beginning, there are Christian principles at the heart of the Orange institution, which I think we would all applaud. Where I think we would find ourselves perhaps at some difference is the value to be put on the ecumenical movement, and how far the ecumenical movement is faithful to Scripture, how far it is within the will of God. Now that's something which theologically, as fellow Christians, we ought to be able to debate in charity. I would take the view, which Mr. Roberts seems not to, that the ecumenical movement is increasingly a movement of lay Christians of all denominations wanting to break down the barriers of the past and urging their church leaders to do so. It isn't just something that's come from the hierarchy, it's something which comes from grassroots, and that's increasingly the case. And I feel that as far as Merseyside is concerned, where a considerable lead has been given, and which is looked very enviously at, I might add, by both Protestant and Catholic people in Northern Ireland, where I've been during the last fortnight, is something to be worked on and treasured, and not something to be afraid of. I mean, uppermost in Scripture is surely the saying of St. John, there is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear, and that's where I take my stand.
Now, some other members of our audience tonight are from the Rock Church Centre up in Everton, which has been described as being on the front line between the old sectarian divide of green and orange in and around Liverpool 5. Ian Ring from the Rock Church Centre, you deal with both professing Protestants and professing Catholics. Do you feel that the message that the Orange Lodge has historically sought to pass on is falling on deaf ears in your part of the world, or can find supporters and adherents?
Well, I think in my part of the world it does have supporters, it does have adherents, but in other areas it falls on the deaf ears, as you say. I mean, I have my own differences of doctrine and theology with the Roman Catholic Church, being a Protestant minister, but I work in an ecumenical situation where 5 churches, 1 Catholic, 2 Anglican, a Methodist and United Reformed, since 1989 we have worked together. We've covenanted to do together all things that we possibly can. And I think there is more and more of that happening, particularly in that part of the city. A lot of the people who come through our building each week to use the community facilities are Catholic or Anglican. They go and worship in their own churches at the weekend, but during the week we see them for all sorts of activities. So we're sharing much more. And I don't think that compromises my Protestant position.
But if the Orange Order wanted to have a Sunday service at your church centre, would you let them in?
I think I would find that a difficult question, because it would compromise our position with our Roman Catholic neighbours down the road, and I think we'd probably have to say no. But that's me speaking without consulting the elders of my church.
Michael Phelan in London, let's talk politics for a moment, because, like it or not, the Orange Order has a political dimension to it, as well as a religious one. If the Northern Ireland problem was resolved to everybody's satisfaction, would the raison d'etre for the Orange Order, in terms of a highly visible loyalist and unionist organisation, would that raison d'etre disappear?
Before I answer that question, I'd like to say that I don't accept that the Orange Order has a political dimension. What we do have is a concern for good citizenship, because we live in a wider community and we want to be positive and contributing members of that wider community. And this has implications for everyday life outside the private devotional aspects of the Protestant religion. So I would just try to correct you on that, if I may. Now, whereas you ask about the situation in Northern Ireland, I think it's certainly true that we live in an age that's dominated by visual media, and I'm sorry to say that on the radio, but if anybody's wanting to display events in Northern Ireland pictorially on the television, they're looking for someone who's waving a tricolour to support the Republicans, and then they go and look for someone who can be summed up in one quick 30-second picture to typify loyalists. And very often they go to the Orange Order parades to do that. It's just a piece of journalistic shorthand.
Well, David Trimble and Reverend Martin Smith, to name two of the most prominent Ulster Unionist politicians, are both prominent members of the Orange Order. It's a bit disingenuous, is it, to say that there's actually a real distance between them?
Well, what it does mean is that they're both Protestants and they belong to a Protestant organisation, so that's not really surprising. But your original question was, what would the solution to the Northern Ireland problem do to us? It would mean that we'd breathe a huge sigh of relief, because our fellow Orangemen and women and our Protestant co-religionists would no longer be subjected to the terrorist campaign that they've been subjected to for the last 25 years. But as to our own agenda in England to uphold, maintain and extend wherever possible the Protestant faith in England, that would still carry on.
Ron Bather, if I can come back to you, earlier on in the debate you mentioned that some of the old tensions and conflicts had died down and had taken a back seat. But if I can take you back a month or two ago to St Patrick's Day in Liverpool, when a St Patrick's Day parade was interrupted and eventually abandoned because of protests from members of the Orange Order. Now, a lot of people, well, Richard Roberts begs to disagree. We'll hear you in a moment. But a lot of people thought, hang on, we thought all that had gone away, and in fact it's still there simmering away. Can you give us your version of events on St Patrick's Day in Hope Street?
Well, first and foremost, if there was Orangemen there, they were there as individuals. They weren't there as members of the Orange Institution in an organised protest. The Orange Institution, in their opposition to the twinning of Liverpool and Dublin, held their parade on the Saturday, the 16th of March, where they walked from the Toxteth area to the city centre after laying a wreath at the Cenotaph through to the Everton Road area. So that was the Orange Institution's objection to the twinning of the cities. Now, individuals who happened to be in Hope Street on that Sunday afternoon were there as individuals and not as members of the Orange Institution. Now, first and foremost, a St Patrick's Day parade is one thing. A parade being hijacked by Republican elements is a different thing. And on that Sunday afternoon, whereas it was billed as a multicultural parade to promote St Patrick's Day, really, that was only a cover.
You're talking rubbish, Mr. Bell.
We have some of the people behind. Some of the people behind
that comment.
Sheila Coleman from the Irish Centre.
My name is Sheila Coleman. I'm chair of the Liverpool Irish Centre cooperative that owns and runs the centre. I'd like you to substantiate that comment now.
Where in a St Patrick's Day?
Where is your evidence? Where is your evidence for the comment you've just made?
Where on a St Patrick's Day parade is the room for banners seeking the release of Irish prisoners of war?
Where on the St Patrick's Day parade was the room, by your reasoning and analysis, for African drum bands, for a New Orleans jazz band, etc., etc.? You're just displaying your ignorance and your prejudice.
Are you telling me that there was no banners asking for the release of Irish prisoners of war?
I'm not telling you that.
Are you saying that there was no individuals carrying placards advertising the IRA Sinn Féin newspaper?
Individuals, Mr. Bather, individuals.
On the parade.
You've just justified the existence of UVF convicted gun runners on the opposing our parade on the basis of them being individuals. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Bather. Would you deny that on one of the protesters in Hope Street that day was a convicted gun runner for the UVF? You can't deny it because we have the evidence to prove it.
That's a massive idea.
Sheila Coleman, was it wise to turn what was certainly billed in in the public media as a cultural and multicultural event, was it wise to allow that to include highly controversial elements sympathetic to a cause that certainly Ron Bather and maybe more than just members of the Orange Order might find offensive?
What Mr. Bather is referring to is an organisation called SERSHA, which is an organisation which was committed to campaigning for the release of political prisoners in this country. Amongst the members of SERSHA are Liberal Democrat MPs, Labour MPs, and a whole variety of other people within this country, English people. They attended that parade as the same as anybody else who was invited onto that parade. Mr. Bather's argument is a spurious one. Quite simply, he is inferring that people responded and protested because they were offended by what they saw. I can tell you, as somebody who was at the front of that parade, we didn't get past the Everyman, and quite ironically were stopped before we got to the Masonic Hall in Hope Street. The protesters who were at the other side of Hope Street could not have seen what was at the back of that parade. But I don't want to go down that road of arguing that, because it's spurious, and I am not going to be drawn into Mr. Bather's line of arguing, which is limited and bigoted.
Well, can we look at the issue which you raised, Ron Bather, which is the twinning of Liverpool and Dublin? Why is that so dreadful when Mary Robinson can come to Buckingham Palace, and when towns and cities in Northern Ireland can have all sorts of twinning arrangements with towns in the Republic and indeed in the rest of the United Kingdom?
The Ordnance Institution made its position quite clear last December in a letter to the Liverpool City Council, where we stated quite clearly that at this moment in time we opposed to the twinning of Liverpool and Dublin on the grounds that the peace process hadn't been cemented. We wanted the peace process to be signed, sealed, that the violence to have ceased forever before there was any talk of twinning Liverpool with Dublin.
Are you sure it wasn't something a bit more, I don't know, a bit more visceral than that, a sort of almost an instinctive repugnance or disagreement with the very idea of establishing any sort of link?
No.
At any time?
Not at all. At the end of the day, what we haven't got to forget is that the hierarchy of the Provisional IRA meet in the Dublin area or in Southern Ireland, and they send out their press releases through Dublin. We found, as an organisation, that it was totally repugnant to us as citizens of this city that this city could be twinned with Dublin when at the drop of a hat the ceasefire could have been called off and the murdering and the killing and the bombing was then to resume.
Kevin Williams from...
Now, if I can just add,
sorry.
On the 9th of February we were sadly found correct. Now again we issued a press statement stating our objections, and we stand by them. We're not on a political point isolating Liverpool and Dublin. As I said before, and I've said many times before, the Ordnance Institution has branches in the Dublin area. We're not isolating them individuals.
Kevin Williams from the Liverpool Irish Centre. Did the expression of disagreement or disappointment or whatever over the whole twinning question, did that come as a surprise to you? Was it actually a reminder that you needed to be given that, hey, not everybody's on side with this one, and there are other views in the city of Liverpool about the whole twinning process?
I think the action that took place on St. Patrick's Day on the 17th of March this year, regardless of what has just been said, an organised attempt, a well-organised attempt to disrupt a parade on which everybody in the city was welcome to attend. It was a day in which the people of the city could celebrate their Irishness. It was not a religious parade. Yes, it was attached to the forthcoming twinning of the city in recognition of the links, the historical links, the long historical links that have existed between this city, not just Dublin, but the whole of Ireland over many centuries. That it was surprising, it was surprising. There is no question about that.
Because people thought that those sort of sentiments belonged in the 30s and the 40s,
not only were the many hundreds and hundreds of people who were actually on the parade surprised and stunned at the hostility that they were subjected to. I think the entire city was stunned by the conduct of that organised group of the members of the Orange Order and neo-fascist organisations who were bussed into this city for the sole purpose of disrupting that parade.
Now,
I think we need to... No, can we just get something very clear before we move on?
We'll let Mr. Williams just finish his point, and then we'll return to Richard Roberts. Kevin Williams.
Can I just make a point? I think this debate that's taking place now is actually taking place as a result of what took place that day. The surprise... Oh, I don't think there's any question about that. The Orange Order in this city has been in demise for many, many years. They celebrate a pageant, and they are welcome to do that. The majority of people in the city ignore it. It is their right to celebrate that pageant. But they are in demise. They are in demise because they are a part of a past history, a history that is now gone. They are now a dinosaur. We have moved on. We are heading towards the 21st century. The Orange Order is not about being anti-Irish Catholic. It's about being anti-Irish.
Richard Roberts wants an opportunity to reply. Thank you, Kevin Williams.
I've never heard such rubbish in all my life. We're not anti-Irish. The people in Northern Ireland celebrate St Patrick's Day. It's a public holiday in Northern Ireland, so we're hardly likely to object to St Patrick's Day. With regards to being the Orange Order and neo-fascists organising this parade, that's absolute nonsense. The Orange Order never organised any parade except the Saturday parade itself. Now, we're not responsible for people that were there on the Sunday.
Did you condemn the violence that took place on the Sunday? Did the Orange Order in Liverpool condemn the violence that took place?
Well, I didn't see the violence.
Now, did the Order condemn the violence that took place?
We condemn violence anyhow, if there was any violence. I don't know whether there was any violence, and I wasn't there, so I don't know.
Ron Bailey, you were there, weren't you?
No.
No, you weren't there. Was anybody there from the Orange Order? No?
No, it was nothing to do.
We can actually name people. And I'm not going to, but I referred before to the convicted gun runner. Now, Mr. Bader, you must know who that person is.
Well, name him now. Name him to me.
No.
Now.
I don't think that would be very wise, given that the conviction, there are very strict rules about that sort of thing. Bear with us a moment. Bear with us a moment. Danny Holmes is a member of the Orange Order in Liverpool from the Provincial Lodge, and he wants to have his
Yes, and I'm a member of 46 years, and I've never heard such... I'm losing my voice speaking of the things that you've said about the Orange Institution. I've got families in the Orange Institution, and most of the people here, good church-going people, would never even think of doing half the things you said. And to think about saying neo-fascists involved with Orangemen, never in your life, sir. Never. But I think you've done this yourselves, personally. I think you put this on yourselves. I think the ordinary Roman Catholics in this city would be a bit embarrassed about what's been said about them here tonight by you people.
But Kevin Williams for the Irish Centre.
This issue is not about Catholic and Protestant. This issue, with regards to the Orange Order, is about their anti-Irishness. And the reason why the Orange Order, over time, has increasingly entered into a position of demise is because time has moved on. In a city like Liverpool, as formal as it may well be, there is recognition of equal opportunities, of equal rights for all. Whether you're Irish, whether you're black, whether you're Chinese, we live in a multicultural city. In this city, more than any other city in this country, this city has been twinning on a multicultural level for hundreds of years, continues to do so on a daily basis. It is not perfect. It is not perfect, and no one would pretend that it is. But it continues to develop. And whilst that understanding of equal rights for each and every individual continues to develop and be understood, the interest of the Orange Order will continue to decline. They do not represent, what on earth do they represent? A period in history that is long gone. A period in history which was about kings and queens, had nothing to do with ordinary working class people or their interests. What on earth can be the interest of the Orange Order in parading through this city, if they can conduct themselves in the way that they did against other people who live in this city in the way that they did.
Now, we'll move to one of our panellists, because Kevin Williams and his colleagues made a very serious allegation about the Orange Lodge attracting, or if not exactly encouraging, elements from the political far right. Now, Michael Phelan in London, Orange Lodge historian, it is a fact, is it not, that political organisations from the far right, certainly in Northern Ireland, whatever they may have done in England, have been targeting the Orange Order to advance their own particular agenda, perhaps even at your expense. Is that the case?
I would say that neo-Nazi groups are grubbing about looking for support or allies wherever they think they might find them. But if they think they're going to find them in the Orange Order, they're very much mistaken, because we repudiate fascism. In fact, very many Orangemen firmly believe that fascism was the political expression of the Roman Catholic Church in reaction to the political events of the 19th century, because it was Mussolini and Hitler who signed concordats with the Vatican. It wasn't the Grand Master of the Grand Orange Lodge of England at that time, I can tell you. And it was de Valera who went round to the German embassy in Dublin in 1945 and expressed his condolences on the death of Adolf Hitler. So who was a fascist? You tell me. And also, that gentleman you've got up there speaking for the Irish Centre, who says that the Orangemen are anti-Irish, just remind him that my name is Michael Phelan. I have my family roots in Ireland, in the south of Ireland, not in the north. So I don't need him to tell me that I'm anti-Irish, because I would be denying my own family background. He's actually talking rubbish, because his definition of Irishness is a narrow, sectarian and a politically elitist group of Republicans. If you want to regard Ireland as being part of the larger British family of nations, then you won't find any difficulty with Orangemen. But if you want to pursue a narrowly Republican and sectarian version of Irishness, which is very fascist in its roots, then you might agree with Mr. Williams. But I find myself speaking against him on this occasion.
Kevin Williams, briefly, does the Liverpool Irish Centre reach out to and embrace all strands of Irishness, including Ulster, Loyalist, Unionist Irishness?
The Irish community in this city opens its arms to all the people in this city, regardless of their religion, regardless of their colour, their sex, their sexuality. All people, make that very clear, all people.
But would you accept that a lot of Liverpool Protestant Irish don't feel particularly comfortable with the message that's coming from you and your colleagues?
Let's make something very clear. The actual makeup of the Irish community in this city is both Protestant and Irish, and support very strongly the role that the Liverpool Irish Centre plays in the social life of the Irish community, the broad Irish community in this city.
We've spoken a lot about...
Can I just... the point that was made there by Mr. Fielder...
Very briefly, very good. Good point.
The Orange Order, the whole concept, the root of the Orange Order, how it came into being, is through the colonial conquest of Ireland. You cannot hide the politics of that. But that is a period long gone in history. It's time to move forward. It's time to unite. It's time to forget all the old hang-ups.
It may be time to unite. We've spoken a lot about division, and indeed within Orangism in England, there are divisions. Some time ago, an independent Orange Order was established, and Stephen Bell is a spokesman for that order. Stephen Bell, good evening.
Good evening.
You've been listening to the debate that we've been having. Where does your particular institution, your part of the great family of Orangemen, stand on some of the issues we've heard tonight?
Well, we stand on the same issue and the same principles as the Orange Order. But listening to Mr. Williams and Sheila, the chairperson of the Irish Centre, they claim that we are of bigotry and sectarian. Listening to them, I think there's more there in them coming out than what there is in ourselves. the political side, I would say, was taken to the national side with them as well.
Now, can I just bring you back to your particular organisation, because I'm right in saying that there was a bit of a schism in the 80s between the conventional established Orange Order in Liverpool, the Provincial Grand Lodge, and you and your colleagues, because they felt that you were a bit too friendly with loyalist paramilitaries. Is that doing you a disservice?
No, we deny that. We're not connected with any loyalist paramilitary organisation. Our organisation is based upon the Open Bible.
So what did you fall out about?
Our organisation was formed in 1903, and we connected ourselves with the Independent Orange Order over in Northern Ireland. There's no sectarianism whatsoever with our organisation or linked with the paramilitary organisation at all.
Right, so, but you do stage your own marches and have your own organisation in Merseyside, is that right?
Of course we do. Of course we do. And most of our parades are connected to church parades. We celebrate the 12th of July, but next to that we celebrate the Whitmunday parade with our juniors, but after that all our parades are taken up on Reformation parades and church services throughout the year. I would say that 98% of our parades are connected to the church.
Now, one brief question is, we are told that numbers in the Orange Order, like indeed most of the established churches, are falling. Is it about time you and your erstwhile colleagues got back together again and buried your differences?
Well, that's between ourselves and not to be debated on the radio tonight. You say that our numbers are falling, so is the Irish Centre falling in numbers, isn't it? They've hit rock bottom. They're grabbing at straws. They turn around and say that they invite every creed in and everything else like that. We've got to say that we've got coloured people within the institution, and where they claim that Combat 18 were infiltrating into our ranks, I would strongly disagree with that. We will have no part of any organisation like that joining our ranks.
Stephen Bell, thank you very much. We do have other members of the, what do I call, the official Provincial Lodge in Liverpool. Georgie Cook, I understand, is one of them, and you want to make a contribution. Indeed you are not.
No.
And now you are from the other side of the divide. You're quite Georgie Cook.
I'm not on the
Georgie Cook, you're from Vauxhall.
I'm from Vauxhall.
And what's your experience of life with the Orange Lodge?
Look, I used to live in Thomason Street, which is the bottom Great Ormond Street. And for hundreds of years, it's been custom and practice for the Liverpool Orange Lodge to walk down Everton Valley. 12th of July. Beautiful day. It's a day out for the children. It's a day out for different groups. If you want to be a Protestant, be a Protestant. Take your kids out. They all go to Southport, they have a nice day out, they don't bother anyone as far as I'm concerned. Or used to think so. I was Tenants Association leader a couple of years ago, and I'd like to pick that guy up that's just been on the... He marched up on Great Ormond Street. Now, a lot of people in Great Ormond Street, which is the area I live in, are very much Catholic and Protestant, but a lot of Catholic. And they took objection to this. And we were told by the police, it's every... Oh, can I just speak? I've listened to all of you. Oh, yeah. Can I speak? We were told by the police, it's every man's right to have a march where he likes. I don't object to that. They cut through, they marched to the top of Great Ormond Street, they cut through not Sand Street, one of the side streets. There was argy-bargy, because people took offence against it, marching through an area. Now, these people had a march. Now, while I don't agree with the IRA, and I don't agree with the other wing of what you're talking about, every man's got his own right, but not through terrorism. These people were at the march, and they were disturbed, and I think that's wrong. I honestly think that's wrong, because I honestly think it's about time to put your things away. So first of all, another thing I was going to bring up, and it's part of this, is I heard someone say before, a Protestant Queen of England. I don't think anyone gives a monks about the Queen of England nowadays. No, hang on a minute. Can I just finish?
Very briefly,
I'll tell you why. I agree with the royal family.
We'll debate the future of the monarchy on another occasion, but George, very quickly, your point. Very briefly.
A couple of points. A couple of these people were coming up and they were singing all kinds of insults, you know, this. It was a lodge march.
I'll tell you now. I've been in Orange Parade on Great Ormond Street in my life.
Can I just finish? Can I just finish?
Very briefly.
Can I just finish?
George,
I'll tell you when it was.
George, make your point and then I'll bring it, put the point to Ron Vader.
It was called the Red Hand Group.
That's not the Orange Institution.
That's not the Orange Institution.
Hang on a minute. It was called the Red Hand Group. I'm just telling you as a people. I'm just telling. Hang on. Can I just give what you say? Can I just have my say?
Very briefly, because we're holding things up, please. Georgie, very briefly.
Very briefly. Can I just have my say?
And I'll bring Ron Vader in straight away.
Okay, it was the lodge. It was a group. They caused disturbance in an area, whatever they were called. Okay. Yeah. Now what I'm trying to get at is these people have got the perfect right to have a march, no matter what the politics are. They've got a perfect right to march through Liverpool and not be disturbed. Why should things happen if these people saying that? They're the right. You're the chief guy for the whole of Liverpool. You know, on this thing. Why didn't you come down and help these people?
Ron Baker, there is some confusion here. Have the people who upset Georgie Cook and his very briefly, have the people who upset Georgie Cook and his fellow residents in Great Ormond Street, are we talking about an organisation that's separate to yours? That's question one. Question two is, why march anyway when the very presence of an Orange Lodge marching down through a Catholic area can get up people's noses, frankly?
Well, first and foremost, in reply to Mr. Cook, the Orange Institution didn't organise any parade down Great Ormond Street. I can remember this instance, and if you cast your mind back... Sorry? Well, up Great Ormond Street then.
Along?
Up Great Ormond Street. And I actually come on the radio on the dinner time programme and explained that it was nothing whatsoever to do with the... It was nothing whatsoever to do with the Loyal Orange Institution of England, who I represent.
Now, what about your marches on the 12th of July and on other days? A lot of people in Liverpool find them provocative. I mean, why not simply gather at a church, have your readings, and then have your day trip to Southport? Why all the razzmatazz of a march?
Well, I don't think... If a very, very small minority of people find the 12th of July parade provocative, that's a matter for them. The vast majority of people who come out in the hundreds to view the parade, both in Liverpool and in Southport, enjoy the day. Now, I wouldn't say that they're provocative. Let me put it quite clearly and simply. If a Roman Catholic parade wished to take place across the bottom of the street where I live, I would stay in the house. If I didn't want to go and see it, I wouldn't go out and watch it. I'd stay indoors. And the same goes to any other people. If they feel offensive to the Orange Institution watching them parade through the streets, will stay away.
Now, the days when rival parades, both Catholic and Protestant, will end up stoning each other and throwing bottles are thankfully behind us, although there may be some suggestion that that sort of activity might be making a bit of a comeback. David Mann is the editor of the Catholic Pictorial, and he wants to make a point about his experience of the Orange Order. David?
Yes, I do think we need... I've been very impressed at particularly the beginning of the debate when people were really listening. And it was quite a historic moment. People acknowledged it. That what we were attending were people from different backgrounds actually really listening in some depth to each other. And I found that very encouraging. I think we've got to respect, as a Catholic, I respect when Ron tells us that this is a way of life to me. The moment he says that, I've really got to listen. It is a way of life, and therefore, no matter what we might, our own prejudice, and we've all got prejudice, every one of us, deep down there, almost certainly has got some prejudice. The moment you say, you know, this is a way of life, and then he acknowledges that the animosity is dipping away, I'm really listening. I'm a curious Catholic because I was brought up with a funny, enigmatic approach to the Orange Lodge. My own father became a member of Parliament, but his great hobby was to play the concertina. And when he lived in Bootle, and he saw the Orange Lodge passing through the middle of Bootle one day, and he thought, I'd love to do that on the concertina. And good enough, he went to the Orange Lodge and asked if he could become a member. Of course, he kidded them that he was a good Protestant, but they taught him the concertina, And in due course, he went all over Europe during the war playing the concertina. I think it's those silly, idiosyncratic similarities that really we should keep concentrating on, as we have done in the last 20 years in this city.
Very briefly, because we have very little time. Ruth Aldridge, if there's such a thing as a neutral person in this audience, it's probably you. Ruth is a member of the British Humanist Association with her own perspective. What has what you've heard tonight done to your impression of people who have a faith, people who are either Catholic or Protestant? Very briefly.
Well, it bears out what I've always thought. A humanist isn't a much more positive person than an atheist. A humanist does not believe in the existence of a supreme being or in an afterlife. So you could say that's what atheists believe. But humanists are more positive than atheists because they set out to set an example and to show that morals do not depend on having a religion. And I know that the Christian church, in all its different facets, always preaches that you have to be religious to have morals. This is not so, and I think this is recognised nowadays. The thing that always strikes me about Christians is that I listen to all of you here, and as far as I'm concerned, you're all Christian, and you all quarrel amongst yourselves, and you preach, and you preach, and you preach peace. Now, the thing that strikes me about Christianity is the thing that's always done in its name. Hitler was a Catholic. The Nazis were brought up in the Christian church.
Ruth, if we start on that, we'll never stop, and we must stop very shortly. If I can just finally move to...
Yes,
briefly
the one thing I wanted to say...
No, briefly, if I may, we need to talk to the panel before we leave the airwaves. Anthony Hodgetts, what you've heard tonight, does it depress you, or do you find chinks of light in there that would enable you to build bridges not just between the established churches, but also with people like members of the Orange Order?
I'll go along with the last observation. I didn't quite take in all the others. It does encourage me to continue dialoguing with my fellow Christians. We have, indeed, as we've been just reminded, things to be ashamed of in our history and ashamed of in some of our co-religionists. Nevertheless, I will continue to work for mutual understanding amongst the churches and beyond with those organisations which have some religious background and link, but which are not precisely churches.
And finally, Ron Bather, very briefly, in an increasingly secular age, in an age when the things that you hold dear are under attack more than ever, does the Orange Lodge have a future? You've got 10 seconds.
It's got a future, it's got a bright future. We've got some up-and-coming youngsters who have joined the institution, have a great deal to offer to the Orange Institution and to the community in general, and I put great faith in the future.
Ron Bather, Harvey Cox, Anthony Hodgetts, Michael Fiedler in London, and all of you, our guests here in the studio, thank you for joining us. That was the Monday Debate. We'll be back again just after 6 next Monday. Until then, goodbye.